right, where am I at here? There we go. Hey, everybody, this is going to be the recording session for the Polite Society podcast powered by the Second Amendment Foundation. We're currently trying to get our interview guest, Cany Petticord, connected, and as soon as that happens, we'll get flying. So, want to remind everybody as we do get started here, if you want to comment and you're watching on the Polite Society podcast, Facebook, or YouTube pages, go ahead and comment on those live videos. We get those comments right away. We'll get them up on the air if it's relevant to what we're talking about, especially if you have questions for Candy. The rest of you, if you're watching anywhere else, try to comment, and sometimes we get them, sometimes we don't. Sometimes we get them right away, sometimes it takes a minute or two. And if you comment, you don't see your comment come up, and you want to see your comment come up, head on over to Polite Society Podcast, Facebook, and YouTube pages. So, let me text Candy here, see if you've had any luck here. I don't. Oh, hey, Warsaw Patriot, he's checking in. Yeah, she's trying to log in. I can see it. No, she says she's logged in, but still only seeing a black screen. And I don't know how to tell her to fix that because I can't sit at her computer. Shoot. Any suggestions, Rob?
Can you create a new login for her? Pretend she's a new person and start over?
Do not know. Let me see. No, I can't. Not on this. I could on the Bullet, but not on Polite Society.
Do you want to pull her up under another name?
Let me
have her log in as somebody else?
Let me give her Carrie's.
Now that's a low-class hack, but okay, we're there.
It'll take a few minutes after we get her connected. If I have to go in under anything under what I've got listed as the guest call in, if she has to come in under Carrie Ann or Amanda or Amy or
Okay, yeah, right.
anybody else. It'll take me a few minutes to set everything up. So, and she just tried again, and I still don't see her. Let me try. Doggone it.
Guess it's going to be a short program.
Give it just another minute or two, and then we're gonna. Oh, there we go. I see somebody.
Got it.
All right.
That's me.
Now, turn your camera, turn your phone sideways if you would.
Ta-da! There
There we go. Awesome.
Hi, guys.
Hello,
Hi,
hello.
Candy.
Oh. Hi, Kat.
All right. Wow, and we've got all kinds of comments coming in already. I've been so focused on trying to get Candy connected that I didn't even look over at comments. And
Paul, Candy
wow.
is very well connected. I don't understand what your problem was.
Candy, when we get to the interview segment, is there anywhere you specifically do or do not want to go? Anything you do or do not want to talk about?
No, not really. I mean, I won't know until we get there.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to go and close this up so my phone does not distract me while we're going here. And let me bring up show notes. And then Candy, for about 10 minutes, Rob and John and I do a very short intro to the show, and then we get straight into you. While we're doing our thing to start with, it's going to look like this. And then when we come in off the first break and do the interview, it'll come in and it'll look like this with you on there. After we finish, I've got you scheduled for 2 15-minute segments, and when we're finished, you can hang out and watch the rest of the show if you want. Heck, you can hang out, participate in the rest of the show if you want. But if you want to leave, all you got to do is close the browser window, and I'll put the other screen back up. But no big deal. So.
Okay, sounds like a plan. So we are not live currently, correct?
Yes, we actually are. I got my software
Oh,
kicks
cool.
us, so we are actually live right now. It's just the recording for the podcast starts when I reach over and hit this button, which I'm going to do in just a few
Gotcha.
seconds. So,
Candy,
yeah.
I shared the show notes with you if you had a spare computer.
All right.
I'll take a peek at that.
Let's see here.
There it is. Thanks, Rob.
Okay.
And somebody's already written out the intro, so I think we're ready to go. Gentlemen, are you ready for me to hit the magic buttons on my side?
Ooh.
Let's go.
All right.
Put a quarter in.
All right. Masada Yub in 5, 4, 3.
Hey gang, this is Masad Ayub from the Pro Arms Podcast. I'm here to remind you that our podcast is a member of the Self-Defense Radio Network. And I'm going to suggest you do what we do and check out the other podcasts at selfdefenseradio.net.
Treat every firearm as if it's loaded.
Never point a firearm at anything you're not willing to kill or destroy.
Keep your finger off the trigger until you are on target and ready to fire.
Always be sure of your target and what lies beyond it.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. We're recording this one on Monday, August the 14th, 2023. I'm Paul Lathrop.
I'm Rob Morse, and on tonight's show, we talk with Cany Petticord about training school and church staff across the country.
I'm John Richardson, and we'll talk about Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron calling out the Biden administration for defunding school archery and hunting programs. So climb aboard.
Strap in.
And hang on.
Episode 672 of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast starts right now. Hey everybody, it's Monday night. It's shortly after 7 p.m. in the Central Time Zone, the only time zone that matters, right, Rob? And we are here for the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. This is the point of the show where we would normally bring you up to speed on what we've been doing since the last time we've been on the air. Rob, as I usually do, I'm going to go to you first, man. What's been up in your world over the past week?
I've been reading and writing. I recorded another episode of Self-Defense Gun Stories. I dry practiced. Life is boring, good, if a bit warm. John, how about you?
Well, I think we had our hottest day of the year here in the mountains. We had somewhere in the 90s, but then we'll go back down to the 80s tomorrow. I spent the past week in St. Louis visiting family. The closest I came to anything gun-related was eating at Sharpshooter's Barbecue, which is a combination shooting range and barbecue restaurant in St. Louis. We had a good trip, lots of thrift shopping, eating out, and just hanging out, reconnecting with family.
John, I was at a range recently, and I thought the lead removal soap had sort of a smoky smell to it, and I went, whoever did that was the best marketing guy in the South. Maybe it was a mistake on my part. Could that have been something done on purpose?
Well, who knows? But
yeah, I've always thought the lead removal soap smelled like soap to me. So,
that's why I'm thinking they got clever.
My brother-in-law is in town. The only thing really gun-related I did was he's also a big gun guy, and so he and I have been getting together and riding motorcycles and comparing handguns. And he likes mine, I like his, but I don't see a trade imminent. I really like mine, and he really likes his. But just more getting ready for GRPC. I finally got the inventory of everything I need to take done for GRPC and AMCON. Everything has been inventoried. It's packed in individual totes, which are just off camera and off to both my right and left shoulders. But I'm not going to pan the camera down because the rest of my office is a mess if you don't look at the green screen. So that's really just family stuff and getting ready for GRPC and AMCON, which is now, 6 weeks away. Coming up very quickly. So, guys, I think we're going to do this. We're going to keep this introduction short because Candy is patiently waiting for us. We're going to step aside to break, and when we come back, our guest tonight is Cany Petticord. She is a part of the DC project. She's very active in Faster Saves Lives. She's a fantastic trainer. We're going to be talking to her about meeting up with her in Detroit and a lot of other things. Folks, hang on. We're going to listen to this ad from ACLDN. We'll be right back with Cany Petticord right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Armed Citizens Legal Defense Network. If you carry a defensive handgun, you need protection from the aftermath of prosecution. Even if you do everything right, you can be the victim of an overzealous prosecutor or even be falsely accused. That is where the ACLDN comes in. They provide immediate assistance when you need it most. If you find yourself under arrest, they immediately pay bail money and the retainer for your attorney. Additional funds are available for trial and civil proceedings. Beyond the money, they have far and away the best team in the industry, providing you invaluable information and training DVDs that are included with your membership and who stand ready to work with your lawyer on your defense. People like Masad Ayub, John Farnham, James Fleming, Tom Gibbons, Emmanuel Capelson, Dennis Tuller, and led by network president Marty Hayes. Initial membership is only $135 for your first year, and you get 8 incredible training DVDs and other educational material when you join. If you don't have tens of thousands of dollars to defend yourself at your disposal right now, you need to be a member of the ACLDN. Go to armedcitizensnetwork.org and become a member today. And please mention that you heard about them on the Polite Society podcast.
And welcome back to the interview section of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Joining us today, Cany Petticord. Candy, I met in person for the very first time a couple weeks ago when we were up in Detroit, and she came up to help Rick Ector with the women's shooting weekend, as opposed to the shooting. At any rate,
don't get that backwards.
Exactly. I had a great time talking with Candy. The brief time that I had to talk with her. And Candy, thanks for coming on the show and agreeing to talk with us today. Oh, hang on just a second. I got to push this button right here. There we go. Now I got you.
You got me now?
I can hear you just fine now.
Awesome, awesome. Thank you for having me, and I'm very honored to be here.
All right. I want to get started with, you are all over the firearms world. For people who may not be familiar, you are very active with the FASTER program, and you're involved with the DC project. You've got a lot of other irons in the fire, as well as showing up to help with Rick Ector's weekend a couple weeks ago in Detroit. Let's start with, I know you are involved with FASTER there in Ohio, and your whole family, my understanding, is involved with FASTER there. What got you involved in the FASTER program, and what do you do there?
What got me involved is I'm tired of babies die in school. It's just that simple, and I know that may sound a bit gruesome, but it's the truth. These babies are being caught in, quote, gun-free zones where they're literally sitting ducks. And we have dedicated, passionate teachers who would give their lives to protect their students. And we at FASTER believe, well, just because they're willing to give their lives, they shouldn't have to. So why don't we give them the training and the education and the skills to be able to protect those little ones and protect their lives?
All right, very cool. John, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to open most of this up for you guys.
When people meet FASTER, they're amazed by it. If nothing else, go meet a class, and their passion will rock you back on your heels. Candy, what surprises me though is it's been around for a while. It's been around for over a decade, and yet, as I understand, there are only four states that have formally adopted it on a large scale. Am I right about that? I mean, other states, it's usually done school district at a time, isn't it?
Correct. And the big problem with that, obviously, is it's kind of funny to me because you'll have parental pushback or school board pushback because they don't schools with them. But it's kind of ironic because, as has been said countless times before, the only thing that will stop a bad guy with a gun is a good guy with a gun. And that fact is no less fact just because it's a school. So I think one of the biggest struggles that we have are the misconceptions that we're going to have these Rambo gun-wielding, untrained individuals running around things with firearms when that is not the case at all.
Why do you think people leap to that absurd conclusion? Is it because it's uncomfortable to imagine violence in our schools, so we have to mock a solution that admits that there's violence in the world?
Yes, absolutely. That, and we know that guns have, for quite some time, guns have been demonized. And no one who, I'm trying to put this in the right terms, so the majority of people who come against FASTER and programs like it, they're demonizing a tool instead of placing the blame and angst where it should be, and that is on the mentally deranged individual committing these acts.
Gotcha.
Let me get some questions and comments in here. Warsaw Patriot says, the number one question I've always asked myself since Columbine is this: why don't we secure our schools? And Charlie Chambers, let me get this one in, says, I'd love to get FasterSavesLives.com once we elect Governor Mark Robinson in office. I'd love to help. and Charlie, by the way, is in North Carolina. Let's see here. Get this one also in from Warsaw Patriot. School boards and partners push back the idea to secure our schools and improve security, or constantly make excuses like, oh, we don't have the budget to do it.
Absolutely.
And my understanding is the budget is not, especially in Ohio. I'm a little bit familiar with the Ohio program. It doesn't cost the school board much, if anything, and it doesn't cost the teachers a darn thing to take the training. Am I right on that?
You are correct. You are absolutely correct. FASTER covers everything.
With the exception that you need the vacation days. If you can't get away at all, we can't get you training. But short of that,
correct.
But
short of that, we'll get you. Mm-hmm. We'll get you squared away.
All right. Let me get this one in from the Facebook side here real quick. From Roderick, he says, some good news. Fort Wayne's Concordia Lutheran High School recently received a $50,000 donation to upgrade its indoor rifle range.
Awesome.
Candy, people see school resource officers. They're very visible. They're in a uniform. They've got a great big marked car out front. If he's sitting there, everybody goes, oh, someone is there protecting my children. Is a weakness in the FASTER program the fact that it's invisible? You could have dozens of armed school staff and never know, and therefore the parents don't feel protected. The most they get is a sort of cryptic note from the school board that says, some school staff may be armed? It's a marketing problem?
I would say no. I would disagree with that because we don't necessarily want that to be known. To be quite honest, that school resource officer is in uniform, is obvious, is wearing the school resource officer garb, but let the range person enters that building, who's their target? That school resource officer. So, and honestly, it kind of plays into the same reason. If you're a concealed carry holder, and not to get into a whole discussion or anything, but if you're a concealed carry holder, why on earth would you open carry? Because then you've given away all the element of surprise, all the element of you having that upper hand. That applies in the same way to the FASTER program. You don't know who is armed, and that is part of our scheme, so to speak, is to have you say, there may be armed teachers in this school, there may not, but is that a risk that you are willing to take? We're hoping it's not.
Right. Well, it's interesting. People have asked me, how well has FASTER worked? And I say, we know and we don't know. Murderers have never tried to attack a school where the school board said staff may be armed because these guys don't want to go up against them. So it's not like we've tested it, which is, as in some sense, the best possible solution. Odd.
Agreed. If a simple sign or a statement, school staff might be prevents a school shooting from occurring, then that's a win. That's a huge win. Yep. It's a win we may never know about, but it's a win nonetheless.
Mm-hmm. I'm going to get this couple comments in here. Brooke Cheney's up first. It's too expensive to protect all schools. However, studies show that all they need to do is make it not a gun-free zone. And another, and going to what you were saying, Candy, she also, with her next comment, they don't have to arm teachers. They just have to put a kernel of doubt in the would-be shooter. There could be an armed teacher. So, yeah.
Yep.
And again, Brooke, it doesn't cost a lot to take a person who's already armed if the training is not that extensive. Is it, Candy?
No, and you have to remember, too, these people who are committing these heinous acts are, they're cowards. They're going into, what on earth could possess you to shoot babies? Oh my gosh. I don't care how much is going on in your world and how unfair the world is. That 4-year-old, that 5-year-old, that 6-year-old has done not a thing to you. And yet, those are the innocent people that you choose to express your angst on. You're a coward. And that it's just unacceptable. And yes, putting that kernel of doubt there just might be enough in a lot of cases because they intentionally go places where they know they will encounter no resistance.
Gotcha.
Well, and I want to push back just a little bit on expensive. It's too expensive to protect our kids, to harden all schools. You know what? It wasn't, but maybe 75 years ago, there were wooden schoolhouses. School fires were a real danger, and a lot of kids were killed in school fires every year. We made it a priority to fireproof schools, and nobody dies in school fires anymore. If we make it a priority to harden our schools, to make it hard to get in there, it's all where are your priorities?
Yes. Oh my gosh, you just said it right there. What is more important than our children? And like you said, school fires, you don't see students dying from school fires anymore because we made it a priority. we must make it a priority to protect these little ones and the staff that's in there with them.
Right. Yeah.
Let me
going on.
Go ahead, John. Go ahead.
To take your point about hardening further, if you look at a recent incident in Memphis where a man tried to go into a Jewish day school, he couldn't get in because the doors were locked. And fortunately, it turned out he was not some anti-Semitic lunatic. He was just a lunatic ex-student from the school. But hardening, like you said, prevented another mass shooting in Memphis. I did have a question for Candy. I know North Carolina and probably some other states do not allow firearms in the schools unless it's a school resource officer. They do not allow staff to be armed. Do you find that a problem nationwide to try to expand the FASTER program to get legislators to understand that properly trained teachers are not a safety issue, but an anti-safety issue, I guess is the best way to put it, but rather a way to keep our kids safer?
Yes, that is a huge obstacle because largely misconceptions. The biggest misconception being that teachers who wish to partake in this, or custodians, or bus drivers, or kitchen staff who wish to partake in this are some kind of vigilante or something like that, when in reality it's the complete opposite. They are moms and dads and grandparents who want to protect the children whom, quote, they serve. They just want to be able to protect. They have no Rambo aspirations or anything like that. But at the same time, we're all tired of seeing our children being made into sitting ducks right along with the people who we hope would protect them. We're not given tools to do so. And to me, that's a travesty.
I agree.
Comment from C&T Designs and Arms. C&T is a teacher. My school doesn't have to arm me. They just have to allow me to carry my own arms, the same arms I carry in every other aspect of my life. Candy, I would imagine of the people that go through the FASTER program, that is the vast majority of them have that opinion going in, right?
Correct. A lot of them, they are already CCW holders. We do have some teachers who come in who are interested in the program, and part of the way through they will determine, you know what, the firearm part is not for me. However, the medical training that we also offer, and we offer extensive trauma medical training, they will step up and they are more than willing to learn the trauma first aid so they can be there, because once that bad guy is stopped, then we have to deal with the people who may have been caught in the crossfire, so to speak. And we need trained people on board who know what to, when to. FASTER trains the school staff to be able to do that as well.
We are coming on these segments fly by. We're coming up on the end of this segment. Candy, I'm going to have you hang on for one more segment with us, if that's all right.
Oh, that'd be great.
All right. Folks, we are going to hear from the complete combatant, and we'll be right back. More with Cany Petticord right after this.
This portion of the Polite Society podcast is brought to you by the Complete Combatant. The Complete Combatant is designed for a broad base of citizens that range from students that don't own a gun on up to advanced students that train often. The Complete Combatant offers several different courses that build upon each other, from avoidance, using verbal commands, and preparing for contact, lethal versus non-lethal decisions, your 911 call, interacting with the police, to even dealing with the legal system in the aftermath. The Complete Combatant courses are a layered approach for all levels of experience that will walk you through all the many stages of decisions while developing a game plan tailored to your skills and your everyday carry. Please visit www.thecompletecombatant.com and make sure you mention this ad to receive 15% off. Again, that's www.thecompletecombatant.com and mention the ad for 15% off.
All right, we are back. This is our second interview segment with Cany Petticord. Cany is the chief instructor for North Point Training, and she's part of the DC project. We've been talking most of the last segment about the FASTER program, and I want to get this comment in here real quick. Rick Ector checking in saying, "Hi, Cany."
Hi, Rick.
So let's talk about, real briefly, let's talk about what we all did a couple weeks ago. What Rob and I and Candy did a couple weeks ago. Candy, Rick owes me $20, and I've been chasing him down, trying to get him to pay me back. Is why I keep going. But what brings Cany Petticord up to Detroit to help with that weekend?
Oh, there are so many things that bring me back. The primary men come there and they're so hungry and they're so passionate, so excited, so terrified. Yes, it's amazing. It is absolutely amazing to see the transition that these ladies go through, just the brief period that we have with them. It's awe-inspiring and it's wonderful. Keeps me coming back. And this year, I actually brought 5 members of my family with me. So there were 6 members of the crew there, and we had an awesome time.
Yeah, there was, at the range I was at, which was at the recoil range, there was, the side I was on, there was no air conditioning, but on the side you were on, half the bays were filled with members of your family. And you, by the way, were the smart one for choosing the side that had air conditioning. So.
Ding, ding. Now, no, that was completely random. Oh, I didn't plan that ahead of time or anything.
You are involved politically, which FASTER is not political fundamentally, maybe.
Correct.
But you're part of the DC project, and when I saw Rick's event, I thought we're changing hearts and minds a few thousand at a time. Do you think a program like that could work in Columbus and Cleveland?
Yes, I do. It's so funny because where Rick Ector's program is right now reminds me of a joke that I heard, and it was that when you see a pregnant woman, everyone everybody congratulates her for being expecting. And what the comment was, everybody's happy for her being pregnant, but nobody counts how many times she had to get screwed to get pregnant. So it's kind of like, I kind of see that with Rick's event, because we're all seeing how amazing this event is and how many women come out and just how amazing it is. But no one is aware of just how much work and blood and sweat and tears Rick and Tanisha put in this event to make it the awesome event that it currently is. So could it work? Yes, but I can't lie, I would need a Rick or a Tanisha showing me the way, because man, they've got it down to a science. They have an amazing event that's going to be difficult, but not impossible to duplicate.
And to say, oh, they make it look easy. That's right. They make it look easy. There's a lot of magic under the surface.
Yes, there's a lot of hard work because I'm one of the people that gets the call from Tanisha after all done. And I kid you not, by the next day, that poor woman can't move. She can't think. She's literally exhausted. And I think she sleeps for anywhere from 24 to 48 hours after that event is over because she's just exhausted. But that is a program that's worth it. It's absolutely worth it. And I would love to see it come to Columbus or Cleveland or even my town of Akron. I'd love to see it happen.
And every year that question comes up there, how do we get this out of Detroit? Not out of, but how do we duplicate this in other areas than Detroit? Could this work in Cleveland? Could this work in Denver? Could this work? Yes, it could. It could work anywhere. All you need is the stamina and drive of Rick Ector and Tanisha.
Yes.
Yes. And that is not duplicated very many places, which is why you haven't seen it
Correct.
in places like Omaha, Dallas, cities throughout the nation.
Plus, if I can throw in there, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, we can't forget that it wasn't 1,500 people to begin with when he first did it. He started out with 50, and then he grew it and grew it and grew it. And it takes time to do that.
12 years.
And a lot of people nowadays don't have the patience to do that because, I only got 50. Well, that wasn't very many. Is it even worth doing? But Rick remembered the reason he started it in the first place. That one news story about that one woman that he truly believed in his heart, had that woman been, her situation would have turned out totally different. And Rick is the rare egg that holds on to what motivated him in the first place. And that is why his program is growing. And he was blessed, extremely blessed, to find a crazy woman named Tanisha who hangs in there with him and does his dirty work for him, because we all know Rick is the face, but Tanisha is the motion. Tanisha is the one who gets this puppy off the ground. It's Rick's vision, and Tanisha makes it come true. They're a perfect pair, and pairs like that are really hard to find.
But okay, so it's just 100 in is it Ashland, North Carolina, John, or is that it? Or Asheville. That'd be a good start, wouldn't it?
Be a great start.
Yeah.
I agree. Any place would be a great start. Any place. But I think my husband has given me one too many dirty looks. He's like, if you pick up or start one more thing.
Yeah, no. Yeah.
All right. Let's see here. We're pretty well caught up on comments here. Candy, if you could, the one thing that we mentioned a couple times we haven't gone very deep into yet, and that is there are a lot of firearms trainers in the United States, and we discussed this a little bit on the Saturday edition of the Bullet, but female firearms instructors, there are some, but not nearly as many as there are guys that train. You are a female and are a firearms instructor. Could you touch on why you don't think as many women, once they get to a certain point in their firearms journey, don't decide to become an instructor?
Because my opinion is because it's difficult and it's intimidating. It is difficult because in a business such as this, you need support. And fortunately, I am very blessed to have my own built-in support system. I have 12 little people who are always on the sidelines cheering me on. And I have an awesome husband who just smiles and says, "Yes, dear." So that works great for me. But a lot of ladies don't have that kind of support. And without it, it gets kind of lonely after a while. Once you leave that basic class and you start getting into more advanced stuff, you don't see many ladies in those classes. And unfortunately, I'm going to mention the B word. You sure as heck don't see many black ladies in those classes. So the higher you go, the lonelier it can get. So it's really rough without that support system. And like I said, I've been very blessed to have an amazing support system, not just in my family, but in the Firearms Society as a whole.
Candy, that brings up a question. How did you get started?
Honestly, Groupon.
Okay.
So, and I have to admit, I'm terribly embarrassed to admit this now, but I have 7 beautiful daughters. They are just stunningly beautiful, both inside and out. And the world is not Mayberry anymore. And truth be told, if anyone even looks twice at one of my girls, it's on. I've always had that mama bear instinct, but I can have all the mama bear instinct in the world, but if I'm not able to act upon that, what good is it? So I just casually mentioned, you know what? Maybe I should look into this CCW thing. And honestly, I didn't even know what it was. So one day, my son Aaron, bless his little heart, he sent me a text and he goes, "Hey, Mom, they've got a CCW class on Groupon for $49. You should take it." And it's been downhill ever since. So I took that $49 Groupon class, and I was like, okay, that was the beginning. Then my my career, so to speak, took off from there.
Yeah, let's be clear. Candy is now a trainer's trainer. She certifies instructors in several firearms disciplines. So that wasn't something. That Groupon class was a while ago.
Yeah, actually, that Groupon class was 6 years ago.
Only 6 years? Wow. And you're a training counselor
that
now.
Groupon class
I've
was
been
6
busy.
years ago. Yes, I've been extremely busy. I'm going to brag a little bit. I have trained with John Benner. I've trained with Forrest Sonnewald. I've trained with Greg Ellifritz. I've trained with Brian Hill. Oh my gosh, I've trained with Sylvester Pocious. John. Oh gosh. Oh goodness, he's about to come to me. John Farnham. I've trained with Larry St. Clair. I mean, I could throw some names out there. Masad Ayub, William April, bless his heart. So I've trained with some pretty important people because if you know me at all, quickly, I'm a very passionate person. And once I believe in something and I grab hold on to it, I don't let go.
You've become an expert.
I'm trying.
Candy, one last thing I want to ask you about. You are involved with the DC project, and I want you to trace down a little bit, if you would, what drew you to the DC project, and what do you do there with them?
Okay, so it's the DC project. I am the Ohio State representative for the DC project. And I will be honest, the reason I joined it is because I know nothing about politics. I know nothing. I still don't know anything about it. But now I'm starting to learn because What I have found out is if you are engaged in any type of firearms usage, whether it's hunting, whether it's just plinking in your backyard, you need to be political. And that's one thing I didn't understand. I knew about training. I knew about the importance of being trained. I did not know or understand the importance of being political, the importance of casting your vote, the importance of understanding that it's not just the presidential election that matters. It's all the little elections that come before that, because the more like-minded people we get in office, the more we have the ability to retain our Second Amendment rights. And I didn't know that until I joined DC Project, which is exactly why I joined it. Amanda Suffolk, bless her heart, saw something in me, and if any of you know Amanda, and you all do, you know that once Amanda gets a hold of you, you ain't getting away from her.
Right.
So
Testify.
she said, "Hey, Candy." I know, right? And she said, "Hey, Candy, you'd be perfect for this." And I'm like, "Okay, Amanda, what is it?" So there we go. So I am learning now how our system works, and I'm becoming more political and speaking out more. Just informing people is huge, 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 huge. For example, issue 1, and I'm just going to bring this up real quick. Issue 1 was based on a whole lot of misinformation, and unfortunately, people are going to find that out, I think, in a painful way. I'm just my opinion.
All right. Well, we are up against the time we have tonight, Candy. I kind of figured this might happen. As much as we talked when we met, I figured this might happen, that the 30 minutes would just scream by. Thank you for coming on, and I want to, before we ever let you go, I want to invite you to come back on again in the future.
Absolutely.
Oh, I would love it. Thank you. I would love it.
All right. Folks, Cany Petticord, we are going to step aside for break. We've got a news segment to come up, and we've got all new news, all today hitting news we got to cover. So hang on, everybody. We'll be right back with our news segment right after we hear from JPFO. Right back after this.
It all failed before. Alcohol prohibition brought us organized crime, and no less alcohol. Drug prohibition brought us murderous, no-knock, wrong house raids.
Police! Search warrant!
No, wait! The crack house is next door!
Now gun prohibitionists want laws to lead us down that same path. Don't Americans ever learn? Just ask yourself, isn't government the only beneficiary of police-state policies? Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership. Information available at jpfo.org.
All right, we are back. This is a new segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. Up first, we have, let me get this from Breitbart.com. Kentucky Attorney General Daniel Cameron is firing back at those withholding money from elementary schools in his state, noting that the woke leftists who defunded the police are now defunding school hunting and archery programs. Cameron told Fox News, first the extreme left wanted to defund the police, now they want to defund our schools simply for having hunting and archery programs. He added, but shooting sports are good for our kids, teaching them valuable life skills. I'm calling on the Biden administration to restore the resources that our students and our schools deserve. He sent a letter to Education Secretary Miguel Cardona, which said in part, the department is manipulating schools and students for political purposes. Your actions represent the latest in a long line of Biden administration's policies that prioritize the woke agenda of the extreme left over the well-being of our children. John, you're up first in show notes, man. What's your thoughts here?
My thought is that not only should we blame the Biden administration, and yes, they are mostly to blame, But we also need to look at the rhinos, the Republicans who said, oh, we support the Second Amendment, and then went and supported Chris Murphy on his, quote, bipartisan Communities Safety Act. Without those Republican votes in both the Senate and the House, this never would have passed. And if there was a provision in the bill that they didn't understand, it's their damn fault that this is what's happening.
Oh, yeah.
Amen, John. It's rhinos like John Cornyn that made this possible.
Tom Tillis of North Carolina.
Yeah. The ability to regulate education is the ability to completely destroy it. You're doing something we don't like. We'll crush you till you comply. Who the heck thought that was a good idea?
And the sad thing is that the archery programs, but especially the hunter safety programs, do what everybody wants. Teach kids to be safe around firearms and reduce firearms accidents. What we should all want. And by cutting the money out, it's just counterintuitive.
Why in the world would you cut an archery program? I understand if you're hopelessly terrified of guns and have the honest belief that the gun, not the people holding the gun, are the problems with society. Why then would you attack archery programs?
Because Bambi might be hurt.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, here. All right. I don't know how much more we need to go into this other than, yeah, it's out there. Yeah, the schools are really being hurt. And there are schools left, right, and center that are dropping. There's not a school out there that can afford to give up all their federal funding. So there are schools right, left, and center that are dropping hunting and dropping archery classes. So, yeah, I don't know. I'm just... Rob, you want to take Michigan?
How far?
Well,
Michigan gun laws have changed. We now have to look at background checks, firearm storage, and temporary removal from honest law-abiding gun owners. All that's scheduled to take place March in 2024. The Michigan legislature passed new laws last spring after Democrats, who already controlled the government office, flipped both the state and the state house and Senate from red to blue. That happened in those sketchy November 2022 elections where you had a lot of 2 a.m. votes. This is the party that first had its trifecta in Lansing. In 40 years, they've got a lot of liberalism they're trying to get out of their system. The measures have been part of the Democrat legislative agenda for years. The speed with which those laws were passed was likely influenced by 2 mass shootings in Michigan. On February 13th, Andrew McCree, 43 of Lansing, killed 3 Michigan State University students. He injured 5 others before leaving campus and shooting himself. Before that, on November 30th of 2021, Oxford High School student Ethan Crumbley, then 15, used a gun that his parents had bought him to murder 4 students and injure 6 more, as well as a teacher. Crumbley has pled guilty, faces multiple life sentences in prison. By the way, he had that firearm in his backpack in a school counseling session with his parents when they talked about removing him from school. So to me, this is a failure of the school system, not of firearms owners at large. Paul, what do you think?
Well, unfortunately, we all want lawsuits. I do believe will take most of this down. Some will take longer than others, but none of the lawsuits can be filed until the law actually takes effect, because nobody's harmed until the law takes effect. So they're going to be written up and they'll be ready to file the day in March when these go to take effect, but they can't. They'll be all ready to go. They just can't. They can't start until the law actually is
Right.
in effect. John, what do you think, man?
Elections have consequences. I mean, it's as blunt as that. You vote for Democrats, you're going to get gun control. And in this case, the issue the Democrats used was to get elected was not gun control, but abortion. They're saying, thanks to the Supreme Court ruling, which I thought was a correct ruling, because I do think that abortion should be the province of a state, not a federal thing. They got Democrat voter people out who were in the middle to vote for the Democrats because those evil Republicans are going to ban abortion, and therefore you have to vote for us. Well, you vote for us and you also get gun control.
Yeah. Get this comment up. Warsaw Patriot. Michigan violated the NYR APA's rule when they voted in more anti-gun laws. Do either of you know what NYR APA is?
No.
Yeah, if you could, and Warsaw Patriot, if you could.
I'd like to buy a clue, Warsaw Patriot.
Yes, please. Let me get this one in also from Warsaw Patriot. Mass shootings, if they really cared, they would have needed this gang culture we've normalized as a society for 3 decades all over our UN. It was a typo. Bruin decision. Yes. NYSRP, I think, is what he was trying to go for.
NYSERPA. Thank you.
NYSERPA.
Yeah, okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
And one more. Also, Michigan's safe storage laws contradict and violate Castle Doctrine law for self-defense for civilians. I'm not an attorney. I'm sure that will be part of lawsuits that are filed in March. So, let's see here. Yeah, and again, there's not much more we can get into until March, until the lawsuits start flying. John, you want to talk about this Fifth Circuit ruling then?
Yes. A 3-judge panel of the New Orleans-based U.S. Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals last week reversed long-standing restrictions blocking marijuana users from possessing firearms. The court, in an appeal in the case of Patrick Darnell Daniels of Gulfport, Mississippi, found it unconstitutional the 1968 law that bars an individual from lawful firearm possession if they are an unlawful user or are addicted to any controlled substance. He had been found, he got picked up in a traffic stop, had a missing license plate. They found marijuana cigarette butts in his ashtrays and 2 loaded firearms, and they charged him in federal court as being an under the unlawful user statute. He got 4 years in prison in addition to having his Second Amendment rights stripped away for life. He admitted to smoking marijuana since high school and consumed the devil's lettuce 14 times a month. He was otherwise not a lawbreaker. The Fifth Circuit said that looking through the lens of the Bruin decision, banning him for life did not square with the historical right to bear arms and toss the conviction. In short, our history and tradition may support some limits on an intoxicated person's right to carry a weapon, but does not justify disarming a sober citizen based exclusively on his past drug usage. Nor do more generalized traditions of disarming dangerous persons support these restrictions on non-violent drug users. As applied to Mr. Daniels, this violated the Second Amendment. We reverse the judgment of conviction and render a dismissal of the indictment. Rob?
I found out how wildly different states are when they look at carrying a firearm while intoxicated. Some states have gone so far, some states say you can't even be where alcohol is consumed or sold. Others say you can't be intoxicated, meaning you could use some. Other states take the attitude very much like driving a car. You're allowed to have car keys in your pocket. You can drink a lot. You just can't drive. So by some stretch, that means you can concealed carry or open carry while intoxicated. Just don't put your hand on the gun and present it. Wow, this is more complex than I thought at first. Paul, what do you think?
Well, I want to go to John, because John's got a better comment than the one I was going to come up with.
You know who's going to really love this decision out of the Fifth Circuit? Hunter Biden.
Yep.
Make believe he will not be using this in his argument before the U.S. District Court in Delaware.
He absolutely will be.
And then I want to watch the next judge who goes, I'm sorry, the government
We're not in the Fifth Circuit
decision. Why are you? Yeah, right. It'll be fun.
We don't know if they're not going to appeal or not yet, though. I don't think.
My comment here is, I don't care what you put in your body, alcohol or other substances, as long as you're not hurting somebody else, makes no never mind to me. You do you. I would strongly suggest, if you've had more than a beer or a shot or a mixed drink, you keep that thing put away. I would strongly suggest, if you've had any pharmaceuticals, self-prescribed pharmaceuticals, you keep that thing put away. But I don't believe that because you once smoked a joint at some point in the past, you should lose your Second Amendment rights for the rest of your life. I think the Fifth Circuit hit the nail on the head with that.
Yeah, I mean, they said in the past, yes, we have taken firearms away from drunk people, but when they're sober, we give it back to them.
Yeah. Let me get this comment in here real quick. Warsaw Patriots, Paul, correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe there have been more thug and gang-associated crime and violence over any so-called mass shootings in a school or building. And you're absolutely right, Warsaw Patriot. The thing is, Gun Violence Archive and a lot of the other anti-gun, let's be honest, places where these are tracked, if a shooting occurs at a school at 3 a.m. on a Sunday morning, Saturday night / Sunday morning, guess what it gets called? A school shooting, even though there isn't a student within 3 miles of there at the time. Doesn't matter if it's gang-related. It occurred within 100 yards of a school. It's a school shooting, and that's where it's going to show up in statistics. So let's go ahead and go on to our next story. This one out of Illinois. Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker has signed a law that bans firearms advertising that officials determine produces a public safety threat or appeals to children or people likely to use the weapons illegally. On Saturday, Pritzker signed the Firearm Industry Responsibility Act, making Illinois the 8th state to approve legislation that limits legal protection for firearms manufacturers or distributors. Pritzker signed the bill alongside lawmakers and gun control advocates at Gun Sense University, an annual training conference of more than 2,000 Moms Demand Action and Students Demand Action volunteers and survivors, hosted by Everytown for Gun Safety. The law goes into effect immediately. John, you're typing my thunder out. I'm just going to let you take it, bud. What you got?
I wonder if JB has ever heard of the First Amendment. And this is a prior restraint of both political and commercial speech. And, the Brady campaign loves this because one of their tactics has always been to look for tools to get around the Protection of Lawful Commerce and Arms Act. That's what they did in Connecticut with the Bushmaster/Remington lawsuit. They used the state law to try to say that Remington violated state law and therefore was not subject to the Protection of Lawful Commerce in Arms Act. The local U.S. District Court should have just slapped that down immediately, but they did not. Rob?
I want Illinois to pay gun manufacturers and ammunition manufacturers not a lot. In fact, Mom's demands say self-defense never happens, so it shouldn't cost a thing. But I think they should pay for every self-defense event in Illinois. We're cleaning up the state's mess. Remember, Mom's demand just says, just let the police do it. Well, I had to clean up their mess because the police were nowhere to be found. Pay up. I'll settle for, I don't know, $500 at DGU. Let's see, at 2.8 million DGUs a year.
Yeah. $500 here, $500 there. 200 million times, you're looking at real money.
So it doesn't have a lot of money.
John, you're starting to break up a little bit. Repeat that one time, bud.
The only problem is Illinois budget doesn't have much room for paying that they. In other words, their credit rating sucks.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah, but I'd just as soon let gun manufacturers get in on the take rather than corrupt unions in Illinois.
Well, there you go.
If that
I agree.
pushed them over the brink, gosh, is that a fault or a feature, John?
Yeah.
You want me to go to Texas?
Please.
First you sent me to Michigan, now you're sending me to Texas.
You're getting all kinds of frequent flyer miles tonight.
Right, bought guns as part of Operation Fast and Furious. Remember, that's the most inexplicable scandal of the Obama era, and one that's still being covered up today. Politically motivated officials who wanted to find an excuse to crack down on our rights joined with inept bureaucrats to create a toxic brew of international smuggling of firearms. In Fast and Furious, the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, those agents directed people known as straw purchasers, low-level illicit weapons purchasers, who worked for the Mexican drug cartel, smuggling inside the United States. They wanted them to buy guns at Phoenix area federally licensed firearms dealers and then turn around and blame the manufacturers and dealers. Those guns were smuggled into Mexico by cartel operatives after agents let the weapons get out of their hands. This week, the scandal took on new dimensions with the revelation that Nadir Sufi, one of the two Muslim terrorists killed attempting to murder attendees of a Draw Muhammad cartoon contest in Texas in May, had acquired one of the guns he owned as a result of the Fast and Furious operation. This meant that the BATFE was in the position of indirectly selling Islamic terrorists one of the weapons they may have used in an attack on Americans on American soil. John, what do you think?
I hate to be a Debbie Downer, but this article was from 2015. I pulled it up. Still, Project Gunwalker, as David Codrea always called it, resulted in 2 federal law enforcement officers killed and over 300 Mexicans. We have never truly gotten to the bottom of it. Were we actually trying to arm one cartel against another? What other agencies beyond ATF were involved? Who was pulling the strings? And lest we forget, it was 2 bloggers who originally broke the story, David Codrea and the late Mike Vanderboe.
And my apologies, guys. That showed up, and I could have just as very easily looked at the date of that. I just didn't. But that showed up as a news story today. in my search I do for stories that were posted within the last 24 hours. And
No problem. I mean, it's still. I mean, there are probably people still being killed with those guns. Whether we know about it, they're in Mexico.
Guns don't deteriorate. Ammunition doesn't. Ammunition does kind of, but it takes a long time to deteriorate. Ammunition that I bought 4 years ago is sitting right over there, ready to be used, and I would have no problem using it today. There's ammunition from Vietnam era that gets used all the time.
Stuff from World War II gets used.
Yeah.
And it still works.
Let's do this, guys. Let's go ahead and let's step aside to our final break. We're going to go ahead and combine our DGU segment and closing the show up all into one segment. We'll be right back right after this.
In 1928, Germany required its citizens to register their firearms, making possible Hitler's 1938 Nazi Weapons Act, disarming all Jews. Now ask yourself, what is the real consequence of registration? All in favor of gun control, raise your right hand. Brought to you by Jews for the Preservation of Firearms Ownership, America's aggressive civil rights organization. jpfo.org.
Welcome back to the Defensive Gun Use segment of the Polite Society podcast presented by the Second Amendment Foundation. These discussions are not legal advice. While some of us are trainers, this is not formal training, and you need formal training. The Defensive Gun Use segment is intended as only as information and entertainment, not as training. As always, the opinions of the hosts are only their own opinions and not those of any sponsors or other affiliations. Rob, I'm cutting down your frequent flyer miles, dude. I'm keeping you in Texas.
This time of year, a guy from Dakota is keeping me. Jason Nelson is a 44-year-old China Spring veteran, and he's a candidate for the 2022 Republican primary for Waco's U.S. Congressional District. He was staying at Hotel Indigo when he was awoken at 3 a.m. by screams in the hallway of the hotel. He and his wife were just having a parents' night alone without their 4 young kids, including a 1-year-old. Nelson left his room to investigate what the screaming was about. He found a woman in the hall shouting for help and desperate. She told Nelson that there were 3 of them in danger from a man in their room. The 31-year-old man was making threats to kill the 2 women and presenting that he meant the threat. Nelson returned to his room to get his gun. Then he returned to the woman's room, goes in the hallway to the women's room, and tries to de-escalate the situation. Twice, he tried to get the belligerent man out of the room. And on the 3rd attempt, it worked. That's when the angry man assaulted Nelson and charged him. He knocked Nelson back, picked him up by the neck, and held him against the wall. He also attempted to take Nelson's gun, at which point Nelson fired 1 shot that struck the attacker. Officers from Waco PD arrived at 3:15. They found the attacker and rendered aid prior to transporting him to the hospital. He later died in the hospital. One of the women in the room had received minor injuries. Nelson was cooperating with officers during the investigation. Nelson is a disabled and retired Army veteran. He served in the Marine Corps. He walks with a cane. There were a lot of other, the hotel was relatively full. There were a lot of other guests who were interviewed by the police. John, Paul, it is dangerous to intervene on a third party, isn't it?
It is. Fortunately, he was armed, but it also shows that when seconds count, the police are minutes away. 15 minutes response time.
Wow. The wounded man's lucky he's alive, given that he might be bleeding for 15 minutes.
Yeah. Absolutely. I'm. You wonder whether you should intervene or not intervene. This guy, being a veteran, decided, I heard screams. I'm a father. I'm a veteran. I'm a responsible person. What's going on? And let's see if I can help. He tried to de-escalate. Isn't that what we're supposed to do?
Yeah.
In any situation, if you can de-escalate, so much the better. And the guy didn't. He attacked Mr. Nelson, tried to take his gun, which you can never let somebody do, and Nelson did what he had to do.
As a firearms instructor, did Nelson wait too long? Perhaps since he walks with a cane, he couldn't back up. A guy has his hands around your neck and is lifting you up against a wall.
Yeah.
I think I wanted you to act earlier.
Could be. What do you think, Paul?
I think, Paul, you need to unmute yourself for $500.
Yes, I'll take that $500 by PayPal, please. Any reputable trainer that trains handgun retention will tell you the very first thing you do when somebody tries to get your gun is you shoot that gun if it will fire. And this sounds like what this person did, and luckily it struck in a place where it stopped the attack. And fortunately, this person will never be able to attack anybody again. But if somebody's reaching for your firearm, the time to use that firearm is right now.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or 4 little children could have been orphans, half orphans, whatever.
Yeah. River Grove, Illinois, John.
Let me get this comment in here real quick. And you got to hit the right button. I would have not left my room without my gun. I would never order anyone to do anything. I would just say the police are on their way, even if they are not.
Yeah, you don't have to tell the truth.
Well, the police certainly aren't required to. Yeah. So John, let's go to Illinois.
Yeah, we're going to River Grove, Illinois, and another DGU that has an intervener. A postal worker in the Chicago suburb was approached by an armed suspect at 9:30 in the morning who demanded the postal worker's keys. The worker complied, but a nearby witness intervened. Gunshots were then exchanged between the suspect and the armed intervener. The robber ran back to the vehicle which had dropped him off, and they fled off to the north. A resident of the neighborhood took the mailman into his or her home and relayed to reporters that he was rattled by the incident. No one was injured in the incident, and the United States Postal Inspection Service was investigating. That's all we know.
Yeah, not a lot to go on that one.
If you're, this was a fairly rural neighborhood, suburban, but not urban, closely packed row houses with cars every 15 feet, and that means there might not be any place to hide. So if you're approaching this, try and get behind the vehicle. Don't be out in the open. You can get shot that way. On the other hand, we're told don't intervene on the part of a third person because we didn't see the entire scene. In most settings, a postal employee delivering the mail is considered to be nonviolent and the innocent party. It'd be an interesting day in court when that's not held to be true. We haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, and an attack on a postal worker like this certainly could be charged in state court, but it's also a federal crime.
Federal crime.
Very sure of that. Yep.
I
was
just
going to say Postal Inspection Service is armed, so.
Yeah. Just looked up River Grove, Illinois. It is just on the south edge of O'Hare International Airport. So while it is not Chicago itself, I would still call it Chicago. And I think the nearest farm is probably 30 miles away. So, not, well, like Rob said, it's
but
not.
But it'd be wooded.
It could be, yeah. It could be. But I just, and there's what is this river? The Des Plaines River runs right through town, and there looks to be a lot of greenway in where the river is. But it's still Cook County, so the intervener I'm hoping doesn't end up with life in prison for some obscure Illinois rule. And let me get this comment in.
I got to wonder what the guy wanted the keys for. Is he going to steal the little postal key, or?
Well, because we all know those things go so quickly. I mean,
yeah.
CNT Designs and Arms Coop says any crime dealing with federal mail is a federal offense. That is federal time for attacking a mail carrier.
Yep.
Unless the attacker was hit by the defender, by the intervener, I don't see this person getting caught because it's
Paul,
Cook County.
I would normally say yes, except there are so many doorbell cameras these days. So they may well have at least gotten a car make. Maybe they got a license plate. Okay, the car was stolen. Okay, but where was it dropped? Because they can, with enough footwork, you can track it down. Will they do it? Postal Service might.
Mm-hmm.
Chicago PD, I seriously doubt it. But
yeah, no.
Or the River Grove PD. Let's go ahead and let's moving on here. Rob, we're not going to go to break. Let's just talk, if we could. What's been going on since last week at Slowfax, bud?
Murders in Washington, D.C. are soaring. The murderers usually use guns, yet D.C. has some of the most extensive gun control of any city in the nation. How can that be? They told us that guns are the problem. Gun control is the solution. Well, gun control politicians, it only takes a vanishingly small number of firearms for the criminals to commit a large number of violent crimes. What if disarmed victims are what's leading to crime in Washington, D.C.? That article is called Democrat Policies Lead to Widespread Violence in D.C. It's at slowfax.wordpress.com. John, what have you been up to?
Well, even though I was out of town, I did get up a few blog posts. The NRA's trial in New York appears to be delayed until January 2024. Previously, we were thinking October of this year. In addition, Josh Powell, who was dropped by his law firm for non-payment, will now be representing himself. In firearms business news, the sporting products or ammunition segment of Vista Outdoor will be now known as the Kinetic Group after they finish the spinoff. The Sporting Vista Outdoors has ammo brands such as Federal, Remington, Spears, CCI, etc. And this past Thursday was Agent Orange Awareness Day. And that kind of hit home for me, as I really do believe it was a partial reason for my dad's premature death at the age of 62. He was medically retired from the Army when he was 53 after having heart issues and a stroke within a year of leaving Vietnam. Finally, in good news, Tom Selleck is selling some of his gun collection. The items are what any lover of fine firearms would call eye candy. That and more is at onlygunsandmoney.com.
Let's just say that anything that's up for auction that Tom Selleck has owned is way the heck out of my price range.
Well, I looked at what some of the guns were sold back in May, and Probably the cheapest was like $9,000 to $10,000. But they didn't really go much over 20 to 25,000. So it's all a matter of perspective.
I wasn't the rifle. I don't know if Tom Selleck ever owned it, but the rifle that was used in Quigley Down Under, didn't that sell for a stupid amount of money? And then
it did. He had donated it to the NRA, or he sold it to the NRA. Donated or sold, whichever. But they made well over $500,000 on that, and I think he owned it. What was it? A 5120, something like that. It was, and he had to learn to shoot long distance for that movie, from what I understood.
Mm-hmm. All right. And then let's see here. Yeah, we're all caught up there. That does wrap it up, another episode of the Second Amendment Foundation's Polite Society podcast. I'd like to thank Cany Petticord for joining us today. I'd like to thank those of you who watch us live for being patient with us while we got Candy connected. So for Amy, Dana, John, Susan, Amanda, Charlie, Carrie Ann, Robin, and Rob.
Until next time.
Stay safe.
Be aware.
And we'll see you down the road.
The views and opinions on the show you just heard are those of the host and the guest and are not necessarily the views of any sponsors or other affiliations. But hey, not everyone is as smart as we are.
All right, we are done with recording. We're still live on YouTube and Facebook. I want to get a couple comments in here early before we shut down. CNT Designs Arm, going back to our last DGU. If the feds put the same energy to find this attacker as they did finding the grandparents involved in January 6th, they would have that attacker by the end of the week. And Warsaw Patriot says the post office should be armed. I agree. If a individual postal carrier wants to be armed, I believe they should be able to be.
That reminds me, a few years ago, I saw some Ruger, I think Security 6s or whatever, surplus being sold, and they were all marked U.S. Postal Inspection Service. I wish I had bought one, just because it would be a cool imprint. And a nice gun to boot, but...
We get this one in by CNT Designs and Arms. Coop says, my uncle was a Marine in Vietnam and was exposed to Agent Orange many times. He had a lot of health problems related to Agent Orange. So, alrighty, guys, I think that's going to do it. I'm going to go ahead and shut the feed down. Again, everybody watching live, thank you for your patience at the beginning of the show with us getting Candy connected. And we will see you next Monday, same bat time, same bat channel, when our guest next week will be Tom Knighton of Bearing Arms. Love talking to Tom. Catch you.